Hey, today I'm going to be discussing about why living in Canada sucks. Now, just a quick disclaimer before you march straight to the comments and type like how ungrateful I am. And I know a lot of current events, everyone is patriotic, rooting for Canada, but this video is about the bitter truth about the dark side of Canada. And another disclaimer is I do not hate Canada. I actually love Canada as a country, but there are some things in Canada I feel like could be improved. So this is more of a constructive criticism rather than me just straight up bashing on Canada. Now, I'm going to be brutally honest with what I'm going to be talking about. So if you get super offended, I understand. But before I gap any longer, let me just start with the first point. So the first point of Canada is simply that I feel like every province is very divided. You look at British Columbia, right? And then you look at Alberta, the neighbor of British Columbia. They're like the polar opposites of each other. Alberta is pretty much like the conservative, you could say, province of Canada, while British Columbia is, I would argue, British Columbia is kind of almost like mixed. They're kind of all over the place, which leads to the next thing, which I don't like about Canada, is that every province, I feel like, don't really have their identity, like cultural identity. Like Canada itself, if you take the entire country, I feel like it's not very cohesive. We don't really have our, like everyone in Canada just thinks differently, and I guess that is due to a lot of immigration laws that has passed through, like since COVID. I remember Justin Trudeau brought a lot of immigrants, which is not a horrible thing if you do it, if you manage it well, but he did it a bit too, he made it like too easy to immigrate, and that kind of backfired. And I feel like a lot of like very dumb labor and easy jobs are kind of being like hired by like basically the managers and employers prefer hiring like foreign workers rather than their own citizens. And seems like a lot of people working like entry level jobs are more people in visual minority. If you go to like Tim Hortons or Starbucks, you could see that majority of them are probably immigrated from another country, such as India or Philippines. And that leads to my third thing, is that I feel like there's too many groups, like cultural groups in Canada, and they don't really interact with each other that well. And in fact, a lot of them are pretty excluded. So if you look at like Richmond in British Columbia, it's pretty much a Chinatown. Like everyone there pretty much straight up speaks Chinese and Mandarin. Some of them do not even know English. And if you go to Surrey, like this is just stereotypes, I know, but I'm just like giving pretty much examples. Like this is obviously not all black and white. Pretty much in Surrey, there's a lot of Indians. You can see that probably majority of them would hang out with their own kind, like pretty much people from their own country, unfortunately. And if you go to like, let's say near Burnaby, it's also a lot of Chinese people as well, and people from Hong Kong as well. So pretty much what I'm trying to say is that Canada is sort of divided. Each province, each city has their own like tropes in terms of like people and the types. And I feel like that really takes away from Canada's identity as a whole. And it's unfortunate, like if you look at the US, it's much more like cohesive. But I could be wrong. Like this is just honestly my opinion of Canada. But so another thing about Canada, what I just do not like about living here in general, is that I feel like there's not much variety of food. I know there's a lot of Asian food, but I feel like it's all subpar compared to like other countries. Like it feels like a jack of all trades in terms of food, like quality and taste. If you go to like China, you're gonna see food that are much cheaper, affordable, and tastes a lot more authentic. There's just lack of authentic options in Canada. Like a lot of the food just feels like watered down. Like if you know what shawarma is, or like doner, it's pretty much like a wrap from the Middle East. It's quite tasty, but if you go here, some of them are kind of subpar compared to the ones you even find in the original country, unfortunately. And it just feels like Canada is not really known for a lot of great foods besides like poutine, which is kind of a joke because like the origin, I believe, of poutine is pretty much it's like a hot mess in like French. That's what it means. Like someone just mashed French fries and gravy and cheese, and it turned out to be a hot mess, and actually ended up tasting pretty good. So it was honestly a happy accident. That's pretty much what poutine ended up becoming. So another thing I don't like about Canada is that I feel like it's a lot harder to make friends. Maybe it's the part I live in, but in general, I just feel like it's kind of everybody just feels it's much more conservative and not as open as other countries, and doesn't feel like a family. It feels like, let's say if I go to a certain group of people, let's say they're all Chinese or they're all Indian or they're all from Philippines, I feel like they prefer hanging out with people from their own kind, which I understand, but I can feel like outcast and really left out when I'm kind of like the only person that's like, when I'm pretty much a visual minority, and it's kind of frustrating. And it's just so annoying. Like, I just feel like race is just like something that's unfortunate people judge on. Like, personally, I don't care what other people's race are, but I know some people take it very seriously. It just, unfortunately, the world runs on your skin color and where you were born. It's kind of really stinks, man. Like, that mentality is so shallow. I don't know why the world runs on that, but I guess that's pretty much society. And that's sort of why I'm like super frustrated in general, like about Canada, is that it's so divisive, and I feel like it's a bit better now, due to like current events. Everyone's on the same page and team, but still, it's Canada has not been like this for so long, and this was honestly just a wake up call for Canada, and it's long overdue. So another thing I don't like about Canada is just the education system, the school system. From my experience, it's not great. I don't know how some teachers were qualified. I remember vividly one teacher was super racist towards me back in like grade 2. I think I mentioned this briefly in my other video. She pretty much singled me out, made me do all the chores and might wipe all the freaking chairs and crap like that. It kind of stinks. And all the, you could say, the Caucasian kids got away with it. Like, basically, I was a visual minority, right? So, unfortunate for me, I had to do freaking janitor duty when I was like grade 2. But another thing I don't like, another instance I could, like, example is, I remember vividly, like, around, like, high school, there was a physics teacher I had. He was, like, hands down, the worst absolute teacher could ever have. He said school does not matter, your grades do not matter, but the way he teaches is so bad. Like, all the notes he gave us and questions he wrote down were like handwritten, and it felt like he scribbled. You know how like certain doctors suck at writing stuff and doing signatures? Well, imagine an entire paragraph and you can't freaking read it. It's illegible. Like, that's how annoying it was. And he literally made us watch movies in class. Like, I didn't learn anything about physics, and that's probably why I sucked in school. Obviously, it's not just the teacher, but basically what I'm trying to say is the education system, like the quality of teaching feels very poor, subpar, from my experience. And in general, like, I feel like there's not much to do in Canada as well. If you look at like China or like freaking United States, even, they have Disneyland, Disney World, they have those gigantic theme parks, and they have a lot more events and concerts. In Canada, I feel like they kind of, in terms of entertainment value, not as many concerts, not as many events. Just Canada just feels very lackluster in terms of like nightlife as well. I know certain provinces probably have it better, like Quebec, Ontario, but like British Columbia, Alberta, nightlife is a joke. Like some provinces are pretty much purely work, and that's goes back to Alberta. Alberta is pretty much a province where oil and gas industry thrives, and everyone there just works pretty much very hard. I remember there's like lots of camps in Canada as well. There's like Fort St. John, Fort McMurray in Alberta, and it's just I feel like Canada in general is so divided. It just feels like there's not much to do in general. Like that's probably why I was kind of. I guess Canada is more for introverts in some ways, but I'm speaking just purely from my standpoint as an introvert. But yeah, honestly, that's pretty much what I do not like about Canada.